Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you to the Sweetwater County Commissioners Special Meeting on Monday, December 20th, 2021. The purpose of this meeting will be for budget, county fire, and strategic planning if we have time. At this time, we do have a quorum present. Commissioner Smith is excused, and Commissioner Shanefield may join us later or will be excused. Please stand, join with Pledge Allegiance. Then after the Pledge Allegiance, we will have a moment of silence. First order of business will be approval of the agenda. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I so move.
So moved by Commissioner Lloyd. Is there a second?
I will second.
Second by Commissioner Toman. Any further discussion? Is there any? We can't amend it because special meeting, it is what it is. So don't even think about it, I guess. All right, with no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You get in the groove and it's just one thing after another. All right, a motion to suspend Robert's Rules of Order, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we suspend Robert's Rules of Order.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Lloyd to suspend Robert's Rules of Order. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Toman. All those in favor, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, first thing up is budget. I will remind any visitors that this meeting will not go beyond 5:30, and also at the request of any one commissioner, we can finish the meeting early. Thank you. Okay, so with that budget first, I believe Commissioner Lloyd and Commissioner Tolman, you've been working closely on getting things organized for the budget. So which one would like to go first?
If that's okay, Mary, since I'm kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Bonnie's kind of putting our spreadsheets together. We got them out a little bit later today, but we were able to get it to the commissioners. I'm really, before we start, I want to thank our committee of Christina, Bonnie, Mary, and John DeLeon. I think we were given the charge to do one thing, and to do so, we had to do a couple of other things, and we may not have accomplished at the end what we were set out to do necessarily. I think we made some really good progress on some things, and just to kind of give the group an overlay of what we accomplished so far was we've updated the outside entity request form. And when we were first given this charge, the goal was to kind of maybe start looking at this process as a grant, creating a scoring mechanism and such like that. It's right here, Mary. This is what. So creating a scoring mechanism to help judge. I'm good with that, Doc. They to help judge and determination of what organizations are asking for funding that are the most important. We've had some discussions about that. I think before we can score it, we need to do a couple of things from talking with the group. And the first is, I think we need to come up with a scoring capacity, not score it this year, but score everything behind the doors and make sure the system works. I also think part of the reason a few of the commissioners, we chose to kind of look at this idea was we kind of hoped we'd come up with a scoring mechanism that would do our job for us and tell us what was the most important agencies to fund. But until we decide what our priorities are and weight those things in those areas, I don't think we'll ever have an effective scoring this model. So I think before we can really go to a scoring model, I would like to wait till we get through this year's budget, So then we can actually run through budgets through the form and the scoring model to see where it lies out. But also it's important for us as a commission to make important decisions regarding what are the most important agencies, and not so specifically the important agencies we fund, but what are the most important specific functions of the different organizations that we fund? Is it important that we focus on higher need populations, poverty populations, kids, seniors, civic groups, non-civic groups, public action committees, or even stuff like conservation district? So I think to come up with a scoring method that would work, we'd have to do that. But with that being said, what we did, the first thing we're going to look at today is the Sweetwater County funding request form. And this is the exact form that we went through last time, line by line item as a commission. Bonnie did fix those things we talked about at the last meeting, Doc, and everyone else in the room. We did add a couple new things, which I'll hit on the way through. But what I feel we've developed is a really pretty in-depth look at the outside organizations and how we fund them. And last year, we gave every commissioner the charge to go meet with 5 or 6 agencies and come back with recommendations. And I think what we've got is when people came back, we all had a little bit different information. We all asked different questions. Some of us saw important things with one thing. We're going to get that same in-depth look, but we're going to get it at every organization the same, because the document itself is very thorough, looks at things a little bit differently than we have in the past, and provides for a really in-depth look of what the organization is doing and what they provide to the community. So we'll just take a quick look at this. We'll run through it page by page like last time, Doc. Are you okay with that?
Sounds great.
Okay. So the first part is just your cover sheet. Name of organization, address, funding from last year, award amount from last year. So if you look here, one of the changes we made is we now have amount of funding requests from Sweetwater County for fiscal year 2023, and the amount of award budget allocation from Sweetwater County for fiscal year 2022, and what the percentage of an increase or decrease is. And the reason we put that in there is we've had conversations with former commissioners that have said pretty much the main thing they look at budget requests is what was last year's request and what is this year's request. So if that's how a commissioner wants to look at it, that number is bold in the very front of that. There are commissioners that want to see more in-depth information that does follow, but that was one of our changes. On the first page, the only thing we really added is number 1 stayed the same. What is your organization's mission? And on number 2, the question is, please list all the service and programs your organization provides, the amount of your funding request you will use for the specified service program, and the measurable goal outcomes of the service program. Everything's the same with one exception. Every program area is service program 1. So what we're asking is, the example I would give is YWCA. Really, when we fund YWCA, we fund their domestic violence chapter, we fund their adult literacy program, and we fund the daycare program. So what we want to actually do is have them write down, hey, here's the 3 programs we do and how much money we're asking for each program. So rather than saying YWCA is asking for $100,000, we'll break it out. 35 will go to this part of our program, 30 will go to this program, and 30, my math's off. I'm a sociology guy, so that'd be 25,000 would be the third program. And so, but what we added to this section is explain the need for this service. So why is it important that we're funding specifically service program 1? And we're using the YWCA example, so the battered women's shelter. Number 2, and then down it will say as how much of the money you're requesting goes to that program. And this is something we just moved from a different section. But what are your measurable goals? We want to know what people are going to do for us if we give them money in the county. And I think, and maybe we won't use it a lot this year, but the following year, we can look at organizations and say, last year, you told us you were going to do this. Did you make that happen with the money we gave you? And so I think that's a really good addition to our form. So that's repeated through the different service program areas. So any questions on that?
Mr. Tolman, anything? I just want to state that when at that end, measurable outcomes and goals, we need to emphasize the fact that, no, they got to keep that data for us
Mhm.
and present it. So it is tied to their funding. Because if someone doesn't have the measurable outcomes met, that's definitely going to be decision for support funding.
Unless there's a good explanation of why they were
Agreed,
met, like the
agreed.
COVID, like, hey, if we're the senior center and we only got to do 10% of our in-house meals because of
There you
COVID,
go.
but with that, they'll be able to show, but we actually increased our door-to-door meals by, so you're right, Doc, there's always got to be that explanation.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, any questions on that?
No, looks good.
Okay, we'll go to the next page. Number 3, what service does your organization provide in this county that no other service provides? Kind of looking for our duplication question is what we're looking there. 4, how would your service programs in the county, how would it look different if we gave you a 10% reduction, a 30% reduction, or even a 50% reduction? And then we have how, and this is all hasn't changed. How many unduplicated, we did add the word unduplicated county residents did your organization serve in March of 17, 19, and 22. And the reason we changed the word to unduplicated was a senior center could count the same guy eating the meal 230 times. We wanted to make sure it was a very solid number. In the month of March, how many people did you serve? And as of that date, so there was no tweaking of the numbers, but then made a very service that you counted the person once, whether they went at one time or the 300 times. And by the way, if you've never ate lunch at either of the senior centers, you should. They're phenomenal and they're really good for a great price. So how many, and then the next question is your organization responding to the COVID-19 emergency? Yes or no? And if yes, how is your organization responding? This was a new question that Christina recommended the last time, and it was actually well thought out. And the reason is we do have a pot of COVID money. And so we may not use this in making their budget determination this year, but this may be a good side caveat question when we eventually start looking at how we use some of that monies that's out there from the COVID. So that's why that was outed. Bonnie, I'm going to turn the next one over to you on the organizational financial information blocks. We didn't really change anything on that, did we? So anything to add on that? Okay. So that stayed the same as last time. It was just the balance sheet. And then how much is the organization's cash and investments? We even gave people formulas to be able to make sure they added and understood what we were talking about. And then how many days cash on hand does your organization at the bottom have as of 3/31? And we give them the formula for cash on hand. And then 11, 12, 13, why is your organization requesting funding from the county? What other sources funding sources has your organization looked into and are attempted to obtain? And what is your organization's plan to sustain services beyond the availability of county assistance? So we kind of want to know there's a sustainability plan. They've looked at options. We want to know what other sources they've dipped into. We want to know why they're asking for money, and the answer could be, well, we've lost our funding sources, or we always do. But we thought that was an important question to ask. So any questions on those sections? Okay. Next section, Sweetwater County Assistance. Is your organization housed in a county-owned building? All these have stayed the same, right, Bonnie? We didn't make any changes. Is the county paying for utilities? Is the county providing internet computer services to your organization? Is the county providing maintenance, snow removal, and cleaning services for your organization? Does your organization participate in the county's health insurance plan? If so, what are the contributions? And has your organization recently received a grant sponsored by or passed through the county? If so, let us know. This is our question to kind of look at how we're providing indirect benefits to outside organizations. And, and some of the organizations are in our building. We provide snow removal. We provide maintenance. We provide janitorial upkeep. So the secondary costs are pretty significant there.
Point of order. Let the record, the minutes for this show that Commissioner Shanefield has joined us. Good evening, Commissioner.
Hello, I apologize for being late. I was having technical issues and had a meeting that ran over.
We're just glad you're here. Just for your information, Commissioner Smith is excused, so there's just the 4 of us, and We're going through the application form that was requested, and I believe all of us were sent an email with attachments from Bonnie just probably 20 minutes prior to the meeting. So you may have those, and we're just kind of finishing up page 3 of 4 and into page 4 of 4, Commissioner.
And Commissioner,
Thank you.
if you have a chance later to look at those, you can please let me know and we can answer any questions. So
Absolutely. And I actually pulled them up in my last meeting that I was in and looked over them. I didn't have a lot of changes from the previous ones. So these ones look okay. But just also so you guys are aware, I have to hop off at 4:30. I do have another meeting, and then I will probably be back on if you guys are still going after that gets completed.
All right, thank you very much. And are you multiple tasking? Is that what we're understanding?
I was listening intently and reviewing a document. I don't know what you're talking about.
anyone wanting to run for county commissioner, no, that is a major requirement.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Commissioner Lloyd.
Other assistance, does your organization have a foundation? If yes, what is the name of the foundation? How much cash on hand do they have? How much is restricted? How much is unrestricted? Do you participate in the Wyoming retirement system? If so, what's the organization of the pay split? And do you guys receive any other funding? And the way we've changed this question was to open up the door a little bit. We put grant, foundation, because there are some organizations that don't have their own foundation, but get money from other foundations that aren't grants, is what we have found out. Governmental, City of Rock Springs, City of Green River, donations, fundraising, fundraisers, etc., not from the county. We want to see where else they're getting their money and where else and so we have a better clue of that. But also, I think it goes back to that sufficiency question. Are they working to not be as sufficient on us? So any questions on any of those?
No, looks good.
Mary? Lauren?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, employees. How much is your director's annual salary? How does your director receive it? Do they receive bonuses? Is your organization proposing any wage increases? If yes, what is the overall percentage and total dollar of the amount increase? If yes, what percentage and dollar amount will come from the county funding? But to be honest, that question, we didn't really talk about that last time, even though it's been in there every reiteration. Part of that was because a couple of years ago, we actually had a couple organizations say they were going to give 2 to 3% cut funding, and we cut them back that much. But one of the organizations that affected was like a Southwest Counseling, who actually really receives a very small portion of our funding, and none of the funding they receive from us was actually going to go to the raises. So we thought that's an important thing to differentiate as we looked at things.
Very good.
How much in a salary wage increases due to your giving to the promotions and longevity? And how many full-time employees did your organization have in 17, 19, and 22? Explain any significant changes. We're looking for efficiencies and downsizing as needed. And how many part-time employees did your organization have in March 17, 19, and 22? Once again, across, rather than asking for 5 years, just did every couple of years. So I think what we have is a form. I guess any questions?
I don't.
Mary?
This is the dissertation part. The other's the checklist part.
Okay, we're going to get to Mary's part here in a minute. So I like dissertations. Mary likes checklists. We've determined this. And so with that being said, I really want to say, I think what we have is we've created a form that would allow us to create Mary's checklist, which we'll talk about next, because without this information, we couldn't have Mary's monster spreadsheet. And I think you're going to have a binoculars like really close to see some of the numbers in there, but it's a great spreadsheet. But we've also, I think what we have is we've captured information we've never captured before that's important to decide, are we meeting the people's needs in the community and going from there. So any questions on the Sweetwater County fiscal year 2023 funding request?
No.
If so, what I would like to do next with this form is in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'd like to just take a random draw of 4 outside organizations and have them come meet with myself or some of our committee members and walk through the sheet with them and have them fill it out to make sure it is user friendly.
Okay. the airport director, Mr. Brubaker. Talked to him last week prior to SCDC, and he said if you needed a test
Dummy.
organization, airport he would be glad to go through it with us.
Okay. So I'll definitely use Devin. And I
Okay.
thought I would just kind of I kind of thought I would take a look at the organizations and maybe try to diversify the populations. I thought like, if we did, the airport's a great example. I thought if we did one of the health and human service type agencies like YWCA or Boys and Girls Club, then take a look at more of one of the other more help agencies, maybe like drug court or something like that, and then just did one more random. That would give us a variation through 4 populations to take a look and make sure the form is user friendly.
Commissioner Lloyd, I would also recommend that you give it to them ahead of time. Ask them, tell them you're doing a pilot test. And
Yeah.
ask them- give them time to review it, because I know I sent it to Conservation District last year to review, and they kind of had to study it a little bit before they actually. meet
And I
with
think,
someone.
and Mary, I like that idea because I don't know if I want to send a room while everyone fills out all this information. I may be in there forever. So I think that's a great way to do it. So the next form we're going to go to is the spreadsheet. And this is what I refer to adorably as Mary's form. Throughout this process, this is what Mary was hoping is to have as some kind of a check mark checklist system of every organization. So if you look down the left column, you'll see every organization that would fall under what we're doing. And then under every other column is just a breakdown of the questions throughout the thanks, Doc. Throughout the that are out. Sorry, the top portion is the organization. The down is the funding. So as you basically see as a reiteration in a checkmark form of a yes or no of service programs. So one actually could take this information, as Mary calls it, Roy's dissertation, and they could go through the dissertation information, or you could actually have a comparison of every organization with less dissertation, more numbers, yes and no's, and checklists in comparison to check it out. So I think what we've provided actually is 2 pretty interesting tools to help people go through in the budget piece. And as you see, it's very similar. If you go down that left-handed column, type of organization, statutory requirements, we have yes, yes, no, supports. We do have question marks under Board of Health because we're still figuring that out for various reasons. But if you look at, it's the same service program questions, how many people they've served in 17, 19, 22, are they responding to COVID-19, operating cash and investments, reserve cash and investments, purpose of reserves, days cash on hand, housing and county building, utilities paid by county, internet computer services paid by county, maintenances, snow removal, cleaning paid by county, participant in county health organization, receive pass-through grant from county, have foundation, money in foundation, restricted portion, unrestricted portion, participate in Wyoming retirement system. Second, organizational pay employee portion, receive other funding not from county, director's annual salary, director's annual bonuses, wage salary increases, percent of increases, dollar amount of increases, percent from county funding, dollar amount from county funding, bonuses or incentives, percent of bonus incentive, dollar amount of bonus incentive, percent from county funding, dollar amount from county funding, and increases to employees due to promotions and longevity, and then the employee full-time and part-time numbers. So less of the dissertation questions, but the yes, no, and number questions are all listed in the spreadsheet. So when we have all of it done, we will have access to a spreadsheet just to look and do comparisons side by side of every organization. So any questions on that?
I like how you guys did both. I think that it's really important, and I like the comparative value.
The spreadsheet is Excel, right, Bonnie? So it'll be easy to plug the numbers in and go from there. Very good. Yeah, I like both of them. And what I like about them is they're documents that continually can change.
Mhm.
And if we're missing something, we can add it. If there's something in there we find out we don't need, we can take out for the future. So I think it's steps ahead of what we used to do, Roy.
I think so too. And in talking to Bonnie too, like the form we've been using is basically, started with a certain template when, if I'm not mistaken, Bonnie, so if I'm giving you bad information, please correct me. She had a format and basically what's happened is every year a commissioner might say, I like this added. So all we've had is a form that's never been adjusted. It's just been added to. And then one of the things I really like is even on the spreadsheet, it doesn't show it the same way. In the funding dissertation request form, it's really based upon, and it breaks down the same way on Mary's form. It breaks down by specific category and concept. So it's more organized information. So any questions?
Well, with 27 entities, we're trying to wrap our heads around how to be fair, more fair, and be able to actually get a perspective on all of them.
But keep in mind, sometimes being unfair is being fair.
Well, that could be. If it's my program, it'll be totally fair.
That's what I used to tell some of my parents. They say, be fair. And I go, sometimes being unfair with your kid is being fair.
That's true.
I like that. And then the last form that was sent to you is, we talked the last time about, do we put on the form, this is the mandated funding organization, this is not a mandated. So this is a form that actually Bonnie created at the beginning of our discussions that we use to kind of guidance, and it's kind of grown a little bit with some more information. And this is really probably be really good for any brand new commissioner, because it answers some of those questions. I think as we've been in office, you kind of know, but when you're in the beginning, you don't know. So if you look at the top of the form, it explains which things are we obligated to by state statute to fund. Well, Title 25, public defender, and guardian ad litem. We have no choice, so we have to fund those.
Question.
Yes.
Any reimbursement from the state on public defender or guardian ad litem, Bonnie?
So for guardian ad litem, we don't get a reimbursement from the state, but there is a state program. And we only have to pay a portion of the expense. I don't remember what it is. It's significantly less than if we don't go through the state program. I want to say it's around 30%, but I'm not 100% sure.
And we do participate in the state program.
It's up to the judges, but yes, usually they do. I know previously they weren't, and our guardian ad litem costs were getting a little bit out of control. But yeah, I mean, there still is a little bit of, there is some attorneys are used that are not part of the state program, but I think the majority of it now is through the state program. So that has helped keep our guardian ad litem costs significantly lower than they were a few years back. The public defender, we just get a bill for that. That is based on crime rates, population, a couple things. They have a big spreadsheet that they send. I think they update it every 2 years or so. I think it went up. It went up last year because I remember we did have to do a budget amendment for that, but we just get a bill directly from the state for that. We're required to pay that by state statute. Title 25, most of that goes to the hospital. I believe we have negotiated those rates. Really, the only way to save costs on that is just to negotiate those rates with the hospital, whether they're billing us the full rates, which I don't believe they are now. I believe those have been negotiated down. I don't know what percentage we're paying now, but that's really the only way we can get cost savings on Title 25. Or some of these further down the list, they do support our statutory obligations. So for example, Southwest Counseling, they provide services that kind of divert that. So it keeps our Title 25 costs down.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Lloyd?
As you see, the next listed is the component units, and what we've listed.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Schofield.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have one more question around that. Is there a way that we can potentially capture maybe not state mandated required funds, however, or statute mandated required funds, however, those that we have through MOUs or things like that that are long-term somewhere in there? And I don't know if that's captured somewhere later. I just didn't want to forget, and I do have to hop off for another meeting. So I wanted to make sure that was brought up.
Bonnie?
So if you look a little bit further down the list, there's obligated to fund by mutual aid agreement. So we do have a mutual aid agreement with Carbon County Fire District that we do pay every year. And then we are obligated by the joint powers agreements. Also, that's the next one down. And then all the ones below that with no statutory obligation to fund, there's no agreement. The only one that we do have an agreement with that is expiring at the end of this fiscal year is the cooperative extension 4-H, the UW extension. That's the only one that has a contract. The rest of these are just 1-year contracts that we do that our attorney's office sends out. And so we are under a 1-year contract with them, but those don't come out until after we've decided on the funding amount. So there isn't anything that we're required to fund for next fiscal year that's under that no statutory obligation to fund list. And then Skywest Airlines, that one's a little different. I didn't know what to call that one. That's one's at the very bottom. That is, I consider that part of the airport. Devin just gives me the amount of that number. It's just a subsidy. So if there are more passengers, we don't have to pay as much. They bill us quarterly. It's truly a subsidy, and the state funds the biggest portion of that. And the cities also fund a small portion of that. County funds a small portion of that. So
That one's in big trouble. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
Governor's talking about pulling some of that funding.
Okay, very
but,
good.
but really, truly the ones that we have absolutely no obligation, no statutory requirement, no contracts extending beyond the end of this fiscal year are all the ones under that no statutory obligation to fund list.
The component units, they're under annual MOU. Is that correct?
No, we usually don't do a contract with those. I believe we did just have a contract signed for Southwest Counseling, but generally we don't have a contract with the component units.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie. Other questions? Commissioner Shanefield did get off, so thank you. Other questions? The other thing, that bottom group is, that's that health services contract when you bring those to us in a meeting where you bring 3 or 4 at a time and we sign those or that type of thing. Am I correct?
That's correct. So
Thank you.
all of those under that list, the attorney's office, with the exception of that Skywest Airlines one, I probably should have called that one something else. All of those other ones under there either don't have a contract or our attorney's office prepares it, with the exception of UW extension. They actually prepare their own contracts. But those are all annual contracts if they have one.
Very good. Thank you, Bonnie. Commissioner, go ahead. Lloyd.
So rather than running down the rest, you can just kind of see it's a breakdown of the component units. We actually give exactly what we're required to pay for, like the events complex. We're required to fund a county fair. So we made sure it's defined about what we're actually responsible for. And then we also just threw in just more for informational pieces. Which one of the organizations that we support could actually eventually get their own mill levy if they chose. It just is information. And then like treatment court, we noted supplement statutory obligation and those things. So I think what it does is it allows a new commissioner and old commissioner to have a good reminder of what we're required to fund, what we can fund, and what we're required to fund, but sometimes it's not the entire piece, it's just a portion of the piece and what that portion of the piece is. So any question, we thought that would be a useful tool from our last meeting when we were having a lot of conversations regarding how do we dictate what organizations are what? And I think having this tool lets us all know.
All right. Very good. I like it. Thank you.
So that's what we've created, Chairman Wendling. I think we've worked hard. We've met a lot. I think we've made a long way. I think it's been really good to have 5 different perspectives in there. Because I think, and John and I have talked about that, but I think we've been able to, and then being able to share it with you guys as a commission to get your input, it's really created a more well-rounded forum from about 5 or 6 disciplines. So I'm really excited. I do agree, Doc, that it has to be a living document because every year we're going to say, man, we shouldn't ask this question. Or, man, I wish we would have asked this question this way. And I think we've poked and prodded it enough in the laboratory until we put it out there for use. We'll never know what's not. But I mean, we've had 1.5-hour meetings sometimes just breaking down certain questions going, is this the answer we're going to get? How do we better phrase that question? So I think we've really vetted the process fairly well.
Yeah, and I think by it being a living document, you'll field test it with 4 or 5, whatever you decide. But I think 2, we need to be acceptable to feedback from all of them. Because somebody may say, this just doesn't work. Here's what will work for us, you know, as well as you as what you're asking for. So I hope we'll be open to any one of those groups on a suggestion or anything.
Very good.
Thank you.
I might have one thing to add.
Go, Mary.
I don't know if we really want to add it.
You want another
Um,
spreadsheet?
Don't start me.
I think we need to give an option if someone wants to opt out. And if somebody else wants to opt in at some point.
What do you mean, opt out of getting funding?
Yeah,
Why? Doc,
because we've kind of locked ourselves on these 27 entities.
Here's what'll happen. Excuse me. If
Yeah.
I can
just
interrupt?
am not sure. Yeah.
Okay, here's what'll happen, and I'll count on Bonnie, but what happens is outside entities will know when we're requesting funds, and they'll come in and say, hey, our organization who's not on this list would like to apply to the county for $5,000 or whatever, it might be 100,000. Our answer to them will be is, hey, you fill this form out through the clerk's office and meet the deadline, and we'll look at it. And we can
Yeah.
decide if we want to add it.
That's why I'm saying you just might have one in case you had somebody.
Yeah.
Or if we
We had
need
to have
to
a
Somebody
second.
opts out, yeah. So, and, yeah, so the commission as a whole will decide if they want to look at a new application or not. And also, if someone opts out, I don't think there'll be any handstands, but, that's okay. Okay,
Chairman Wendling, I was going to share when I was the director at NowCap, Rock Springs, we actually put in for funding in 04 or 05. And that was the first time we had ever put in for it. And and at that time, they were also giving funding to Southwest Wyoming Rehabilitation Center. And of course, they're out of business now, but we actually had never put in for it. Mary found out when the dates were, put in for it, got denied, never asked for it again. SWRC got $1.2 million over 4 years and went out of business. And I have no bitter pills about that, but with that being said, we never were funded, and we were actually told by that commission that it's because we were financially in a good spot. So,
we would,
but anyway, so I've seen it happen over the years, and even have done it myself for an
I just
organization.
wanted to cover the bases.
in
Yeah.
some ways, there's some people that would not like that brought back up.
I know, but hey, I still have bitter pills. I'm not gonna lie.
All right. Okay. Anything else about the forms? Next steps.
Next steps, testing over the next couple of weeks, Doc. I'd like to actually have it done by January 1, but I don't think that's realistic because of the holiday season. I'm thinking testing by January 8th. And like I said, I can just hurry and send those out to people, let them know where resources to help them out, give them a deadline to let them know, and maybe set a time to have a conversation with them if they need help. And I think we could have it tested by January 8th. And then after that, I think we can move forward pending any comments or feedback.
Well,
If you need help to meet with some of those. with you
Absolutely.
or
I'm
with
going to have
them,
to call on people to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is when you send it out, tell them that it is a test and to be sure to make comments,
Mhm.
good or bad, about
Yeah.
the forms themselves.
And that's kind of where I kind of want to be picky of where I put it too, is I want to also pick some organizations that I know, and this is why Devon's probably a really good choice. I want someone that's going to be forefront and say, here's the strengths, here's the weaknesses. If you change the wording here, it would make more sense. And having people that I think would be willing to be more forefront is important.
yeah, and the airport, yeah, Devin would fill it out, but again, too, being obligated because it's agreement, he'd have to be a good one to have do it. So my question is when I take a look up in the red and it says, as you're planning next steps, it says form due April, whatever. How is that going to work, or what's the thought about, are we going to start bringing in outside agents, or I should just say, component units, outside agencies, or are we going to wait until we get this back and then start scheduling.
Doc, I thought, we just had that date on there because it was pretty much what it was in the past, to be honest. Am I right, Bonnie? It's kind of what we went with.
It's what we've gone with in the past. It's usually been due later April to give me enough time to compile the information, and we are statutorily required to present the requests to the board by May 15th. So historically, I have done that the first meeting in May. I have done it earlier before, like the second meeting in April, I think a year or 2 years ago. I think we did it just a little bit earlier because you wanted more time. So we can do that earlier. The reason I don't want to do it too early is because if we do it early, a lot of the agencies call me in a panic because they don't know yet what they need, or they're waiting for answers on other things and they don't quite know how to fill out the form. Depending on what happens, it'll change. And so that's why it's been in April, just to meet that statutory requirement. There is really, we have on there that the financial information is supposed to be through March 31st. So having it due late April gives them enough time to get it through March 31st. Sometimes they don't have everything updated if you have it due really early in April.
Are we going to then start meeting with those groups after that due time, or what's your thoughts?
I'll be honest, Doc, we didn't really talk about that as a committee because I saw that more as a group whole, as a commission. And then for me, I see where Bonnie's coming with on the deadlines, but in my mind was a little different. Was if we have to change some dates on the form and say, hey, we want financials through March, we can, or April or February, and we want to meet with people earlier, we can't get it out earlier, because I know that was one of our, and we can adjust the form accordingly. But that was just my thought.
You can, or I'm not sure what you're wanting, what information you're wanting. Are you wanting the information on this form before you meet with them so you can discuss the answers to this? Or are you wanting more information about their entity, their agency, and what they do, kind of more of a background? I guess it just depends on what you're planning on discussing with them.
If you want to sit down and talk with people about what they want in their budget and what it is they're asking for, you're going to have to do it after they fill it out.
Right, if that's what you're after.
And so my question is by using let's just say this, just use as an example. One option is go with your dates, and then we start meeting with all those groups in a month's time, which if that's what we want to do, that's what we do, but that's going to be special meetings over a month's time, plugging them all in to go over it with them. And if that's what we decide as a group, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
If we want to move form due date up earlier, so we can start meeting earlier, that's another option. But I think that's a question for all of us in that. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, I think
I wouldn't want to start meeting in January, having special meetings like we are now to meet with groups if we don't have anything to meet over.
Well, I think and I think for us to meet with groups, Doc, I think this form was created to be able to have a successful meeting and discussion, and to be able to, there's not a lot of stones left unturned in this questionnaire. And I think this would really allow us to ask nitty-gritty questions and really get a comprehensive look at things.
Yeah, and I agree. I have no issue. I just want to make sure what we're committing to getting done with all the groups after the due date, prior to meeting. Now, I also know when you submit the budgets by the required statute dates, especially that first one, nothing needs to be final until in July. Am I correct, Bonnie?
We have until the third Monday in July. I do like to do it I like to finalize the budget in June so that people can start spending money and we actually have a budget approved before we pay payroll and before we start the year. Otherwise, people can't even put in requisitions or anything if we don't have it finalized and if I don't have it posted.
And those are important dates. Those are important things to know because that's important for our departments and, well, I'll say our core government. We want to make sure they can start getting purchases and that type
Yeah,
of thing.
so,
So,
so since, because the statute actually used to say you had to do it, I believe it was on the third Monday in July. But now they've changed it to where it has to be on or before the third Monday in July. So since they've changed that statute, we've been doing it on the Thursday following, we've had the budget hearing and the adoption on the Thursday following the second meeting in June is when
Okay.
we've had it.
so whatever this due date is on this form in April, I think it's whatever we start scheduling to meet with people in special meetings.
And we can change it. If you do want it earlier, we can change it. That can be before April if that's when you
Well-
would like it. And we can change the dates. Really, the only dates it affects for the financial information is the balance sheet and income statement dates. And then we'd have to change the ones that say March 2022 if we do have it earlier also for the
Would-
residents served and the employees.
Would this be a fair question for, what I would do is you and Commissioner Tolman have worked very hard on this. And I don't have any problem with, there's just three of us now, so two commissioners are gone, but I wouldn't have any problem if two of you got together with Bonnie and set a date based on what you know, who we got to meet with and that type of thing, so that you know we're going to have special meetings.
Okay.
I don't want to, I think this has worked well, having special meetings versus following meetings.
You know what, you don't, like, in some of our meetings, it go till 3 or 4, then you have to stay here and hear budget till 7 o'clock at night.
Doesn't
You
go
become,
well.
you become worthless. I mean, I just
No.
be
So
honest.
this works well. Let's do it right and continue doing it. So you and Commissioner Tolman get together with Bonnie and say, okay, here's the due date. And you can determine that somewhat based on meeting with
Mhm.
your pilot group, test group. That makes sense?
Yep.
And say, here's the due date. Just put it out there and come back to us. And
I don't
then,
think we have to meet with all 27 of them. Based on their questions, we'll know which ones we need to pull in to meet with. I don't think,
that's true. That's
because in the
true.
past, we haven't, commission hasn't always met with all 27.
No, but I would like to just go back to some conversations I thought I was hearing was the desire to meet with everybody, to learn what everybody's doing. Now, I'm not talking about departments. I'm not talking about
Right.
electeds.
No, I think we do those earlier
Well,
to get a heads up with it, with their planning, you know.
well, yeah, they can do their budgets and I think if I were to say this, and we've heard it before, is right now for personnel, we've established health insurance. Mr. McLean has been able to put together what the steps are that people will get that they required by policy. So doing all the adjustments and everything, you can have personnel costs within 5% right now. The only thing missing, and I think it's very important to help bring that together and to know in personnel costs, so we know how it's going to impact the budget, is if we're going to give a cost of living raise. And I don't want to do that today, but I think I would like to put that just as a conversation at a workshop for us to have a cost of living raise for our employees, if you're agreeable, commissioners. What do you think?
I'm absolutely agreeing in that discussion.
Do you want to make it agenda item for a regular meeting? You want to do a workshop first?
I think you could have a workshop to shade it out, then make the official decision
Yes,
at a meeting.
That's what you'd do.
Uh.
We could sit here and come to a consensus and then at the next meeting, make it official. What do you think, Commissioner Toman?
Yeah, but I wouldn't like to see us do that till we have a better idea of what our budget's going to be. How much money do we have coming in? And I'd like to see us predetermine on these outside entities before we ever
Well,
send a form out as what dollar amount are we going to allocate to this? So
Okay.
we kind of know where we have to chisel.
Mhm.
let me just kind of answer some of that for you is, okay, so then we go to operations. So we're missing that piece for our personnel. right now. I don't know what else is missing in personnel. Do you, Bonnie?
No, that's the main one, but I
That's
just,
the main one.
I did just want to throw in there, I mean, we always can look at it later, but one of the benefits of looking at it earlier and having it determined earlier is it will be in the budget earlier. And then also I usually do get asked quite often what the county's thinking as far as cost of
Well,
living increases, so people can follow what the
It's-
county does.
Just, yeah,
Otherwise, you're gonna get numbers all over the place on these request
that's
forms.
right. So historically, when we've waited till the end to see what our outside agencies are, historically, we have not been kept our employees up to date on cost of living raises because we've said, wait a minute, it's our employees that we're going to not take care of in order to take care of outside agencies. And I think with what we did for health insurance as a commission, because that was good for employees. I think if we continue that mode, it's just my thinking. So it doesn't have to be this way, but just my thinking is, we need to take care of employees ahead of time rather than later, because so often if you wait till late, they're the ones that are left in the dust and the money goes to other places that, cuts into what our things. So you can determine personnel costs with that exception. You can, within 5% over 5 years, take a look at operations and determine operations. We know the work that Mr. Davis does. He can get us pretty close to where our revenues will be. So then subtract, like I said, those two from revenues. We have X amount of dollars from revenues left. Then we also know how far we want to take our reserves down. And then we also know that over here's some other pieces of money if we want to use. And that's why I think from that standpoint, we do deduct that amount of money, see what's left from our revenue to do our capital. And then after capital, there's money left over. Plus, if there is, plus we said we take our reserves down to 26, Bonnie,
25,
25 or 26, I don't know. 25 was it?
it was 25.
All right, down to 25. And whatever's left, we have for those outside agencies. But my point is I think we can get there. But I just don't want to see our employees. I don't want to see the budget balanced on the back of the employees, and how you do that is you short them what they deserve by giving it to other areas. That's just my thinking. Okay, now you're thinking. I wanted to answer some of the stuff you were talking about. So,
I would like to, well, first is to prioritize what we're looking at in the budget. Like we have 3 big issues on the burner right now: ambulance, fire, and that joint telecommunications, which are 3 entities that we're going to have our focus on. But then also, I would like to be able to have the opportunity to meet with the electeds and the department heads before we start down. Just have a work session with them. What are they thinking about the raises and about upcoming expenses that they might have? So as we start to head into the actual budgeting where we see the numbers, we've kind of had a chance to circle around and visit with everyone and kind of get their feelings on some of these issues. And then maybe start meeting with some of those component units after you've covered your electeds and your department heads, and
they could,
you've focused on your priorities, because some of those priorities are going to make major decision moves. Then start down through the component units as we go into February and March to start having a roadmap, so we get everything covered by the time we
Yeah.
hit the heavy stuff in April.
well, the ambulance you have answered, it's going to be 1.2 million or more, no matter which direction it goes.
Yeah. So I think, Mary, I think you're actually saying pretty much the same thing Doc is we got to start with our elected officials and our department heads and take a look at the big picture, because every year I've been
Right.
part of the budget for 3 years. We look at all those guys, but sometimes we're meeting with those same departments as we are the outside entities. I think we should make our picture clear of what the inside is,
Right.
and then we work on the outside. And
Well-
is that, I think that's what Doc is saying, and we'll have a better picture once we know what Dave has. We're gonna put the
Yeah.
onus on Dave, and once we know, and we've made our decisions of, hey, Doc's right. He's sometimes, we'll talk at the very beginning. It'd be nice to get the employees at 2% COLA. But if you don't talk about it till the end, and you've allocated all the money to everyone else, and you're already you're already borrowing money from reserves, or you're at zero, it's hard to go back and take away. Whereas if we did that ahead of time, it might be easier to allocate
Well,
that.
and I
as we
think
go down
we
the
have a
road.
stronger position. So the commission doesn't always operate in a vacuum, that we have the
Here's-
input that we need from our elected and our department heads.
Here's what I think can help you. Because you haven't been through this process fully, because you just
Right.
have not. Bonnie can send out requests to department chair and electeds and say, hey, maybe not tomorrow, but she could. I mean, she realistically say, hey, you guys already know what your budget's gonna look like, what your needs are. They've figured it out. And they could go ahead and they could do their budgets and get things together so that we could start meeting with them sooner. I do not, I feel bad for this. I don't want to do what we did last year, is at the end of meeting with all the outside agency component units and had done our department chairs and everything, or departments and elected officials, we came back, we needed to polish some more money, and we took it from our departments. That's where we took it.
I
And
don't think we'll have to if we start that conversation. early.
my desire is we have our departments and we have our electeds, our core government, I call that, done ahead of time. And we don't go back to them and again, balance the budget on core government.
I agree.
So we can start those budget things early. And we can have them come in, which I think will meet your needs. And we can make some adjustments because this is your first time to see what your needs are. I don't think we need to blow them off. I don't think we need to ignore them. I don't want to see that happen with any commissioner's desire with the budget. I don't think anybody else does either, Commissioner. So what's your thoughts about that? So you have ambulance that's taken care of. Joint communications,
Wow. Hopefully.
well,
No,
but
it's
all
gonna
that
take
is
a
an
while.
MOU. But still remember, they can submit their budget. We'll have, hopefully, we, if things don't work out, we may not have any oversight until next year. Because it takes all three entities to agree. First of all, to open up the contract. And then second of all, it takes all three of them to agree on the changing of one word. That's how the agreement's written. So I'm not sure that'll happen right away. But my desire is maybe it will. Who knows? And then, of course, you'd mentioned fire. I know that we have that on our list tonight. We have missing two commissioners, which is missed, but I think it's fair if Mike is here and if we as commissioners have any questions that you do. But my biggest thing is let's finish up with our budget. Mike was here. I hate to waste his time, but he'll show up again another time if we choose to wait. But I think it's fair. If there's questions about fire, we need to ask Mike, and it's okay. Even if it's just three of us until all five of us get together. So as we move forward, does that help a little bit, Commissioner?
Mhm.
Commissioner Lloyd?
I'm good with the process as
All right,
outlined.
so I would say, Bonnie, we want to meet with core government on budgets. So let's do one, an appropriate time in the near future. Notify them it's time to do their budget with their budget sheets.
So you want them due before the outside agencies and component units then?
Yes, we
Okay,
do.
do you have a date in mind that you're thinking or
Well,
timeframe?
I'm thinking, I won't try to interpret my other commissioners, my fellow commissioners, but in my mind, the date that it has to be completed so we can meet with them prior to when we start meeting with the other ones in whatever date you three set.
Mhm.
set
Are you thinking like a month earlier?
for their deadline.
Yes.
Well, let's see, this is my head.
Or how long? Yeah, how
Well,
many
you know,
meetings are you
when I
wanting to
think about
have?
departments, I think about core government. There's no reason that we could not do them all in, I would say, no more than 3 special sessions.
And are you wanting to have more special sessions than we're currently having, like one a week, or are you wanting still just to have them the Monday prior?
I think whether we have more or not will depend on how many we have of
Okay,
departments in that. So the answer is maybe.
okay.
Yeah, well, you know, if I'm thinking a month ahead of time and we're talking about core government, well, in a month, we only have 2 meetings.
Right.
And I don't think, to be fair to those departments and core government, do we want to do more than 4 or 5 meetings? Would you agree, or are you
Yeah,
okay?
probably no more than 4, but I have a question. Maybe we could start meeting with them before we actually have their final budget, just to get that discussion going about what to expect. Are you expecting any changes? And let me just ask
Sure.
Divas and
You-
department heads
whoever-
and
whoever-
electeds, would it be a problem if we asked you to submit your budget earlier than you have been? Or would it be okay to just have a meeting, you discuss your needs?
Yeah, I think, I think speaking just for me as an elected official, my budget is fairly consistent. My personnel costs are the biggest part of it.
So it wouldn't be a really big deal to call you in like in February and start going through.
No, for me, it would not be. I could meet with you in February and give you a pretty good idea what we would need.
Before you ask the 2 department heads that are out in the audience, I'm gonna, because we want to hear the recording, so they're gonna have to come to a mic.
Oh,
So would you please call either one or both of those department chairs to the table? You've got a couple empty chairs. They'd come up. Fire Warden Bernasian,
the question is, would it be a hardship to have you submit your budget earlier so we could start through that process?
you got to answer that in the microphone, Mike.
No.
Thank you. Road and Bridge, Mr. Legursky.
'Cause
I
don't
just
wanna
want to know how
call
he's
a
going to
special-
prognosticate gas costs.
Yeah.
I just want to get a feel for if we start having.
Answer is no, because it's already been figured for me.
Thank you. Okay. So we could start in like February, start doing the
Sure.
department heads and electeds. And then so when we get to April, we're not behind the.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Can I ask a clarification with what Mr. Legursky said, just with you? I think last year, the budgets were adjusted at the end. This year, the goal is they're going to submit their budget and there won't be Bonnie won't be making those changes. They'll submit what they think they need and want. And that's what we're going to review, correct?
That's correct. So
I have a question. So you will be meeting with, I just want clarification on this. You would like to meet with all department heads and all elected officials? Is that correct? Or,
Correct.
Okay,
yeah, anybody that does a budget. Okay. Please hang on a minute, our chief, and we'll kind of, since you guys are kind of talking, you and Mary with Bonnie, continue that so we don't have too many fingers in pie.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm good. Are you, Mary?
Are you, Mary? Okay.
So I just want to reiterate, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, that we are going to be really taking a look at what the elected officials' requests and not be altering those, correct? Unless we have to make small cuts,
Well,
adjustments.
we may have to sit with them and say, hey,
Mhm.
can you do this or do that, or any department chair, but once we're done visiting with them, we won't alter their budget. We may call them back and say, hey, we need you to work with us on that. Will it work? And if they say absolutely not, then, we've got to support that. It didn't happen last year. And that's to no fault of anybody but commissioners directing. We have to wear that one, but we have to make sure it doesn't happen again. So that's the best way I'm gonna put that. That's, anything that's done regarding budget, regarding running the county. That is nobody but the commissioner's job. It isn't any one department chair. It isn't any one office. It is the commissioners. Okay. Fire warden, come on up.
So my question to you would be, could you please clarify prior to that time that you want the department heads to come before you, how we will handle capital requests for expenditures? If we're going to use through the committee, do the capital form, whether we are to put capital expenses in our budget or leave them out of our budget. There was some level of confusion this last year.
There was, you're right.
So I would just ask that that gets clarified prior to February. That's all. Thank you.
You know, Jean, will you come up a minute? Capital Committee. Tell me what's the best way that worked.
However you guys want to do it, it's your money.
I know it is, but tell me how it worked
Yep.
best
It works for you. You're the one handling
for
it.
that group. I mean,
For the best, I think taking the, how we did it last year, but we just need to clarify how Bonnie wants that in the budget, whether we want it as a pool, whether we want it as a department. What that works. The hard part is if we do it as a department, clarify me if I'm wrong, and we don't use that money because something fell through or a project couldn't get done, we have to do a budget amendment to move it in somewhere else to a department to go on down our list. But I think it worked well last year. We have some tweaks. We learned a lot last year.
So put it in
um,
the Budget is what you're saying?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, put
But
it
the
in
hard part is
capital.
tracking, and I don't know. That's where Bonnie comes in.
Well, I think the question more was from Mr. Bornasian was whether or not the department heads and elected officials are supposed to put it in their budget, or the capital committee communicates it to me and then I put it in the budget. There was just a lot of confusion about that last year. I think that was Mr. Bornasian's question. And
Does it go in the individual budgets or does it go into a capital budget?
it's still, well, it goes into the individual budgets in the system, but it goes into a capital budget as a whole. I don't think Mr. Bornasian was addressing that, but you're right. That question is for the commission, but I think they're two separate questions. Does the commission like how it's being done this year, where all the capital is rolled up into one budget in the budget resolution? That's what Jean's addressing right now.
and that works, doesn't it?
I think it works because it gives us flexibility like the capital committee wants, because the hard part about it is if it's spread out and we don't do, say, a roofing project that's 300,000 because we just couldn't get anybody to bid it. That money's still allocated. Maybe we can use it for project 7, 8, and 9. But if it's not, then we can't use that money.
Okay, let's
Without a
keep
budget
us- let's-
Without a
amendment.
budget amendment.
without-
Right.
Let's keep using it so we can
And-
look at that.
Mr. Legursky, and one of the questions I'd have for you, Gina, is, and especially with us going to the ad valorem tax collection system, it may become even more important because we may make the list that, if I'm not mistaken, like 1 through 15, but we not always knowing what we're collecting month to month like we used to, we may really have to say at the beginning of the year, we're going to do these projects. And then as we've collected more money through the ad valorem, then we can start hitting 4, 5, 6, 7. Am I right there?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's going to be cash flow based more than anything.
Yeah. And we've never had to do it that way before. So I think that's an important way to look. I think it's going to make it easier to deal with the ad valorem changes, doing it the way we intended. And I think we learned a lot from last year.
We did the one thing that we want to do, and we have to work better as a committee to make sure that we're out a good 5 years with some realistic numbers instead of 1,
Mhm.
where I think this last year we were out 1 year.
Mike, you part of that capital committee, aren't you? You don't meet with it. Does that answer your question? That work for you?
So sorry, I still think the question is, and this is just something, and I don't care either way. This is just something that'll have to be communicated to me before I get that budget information out, so I can include that. Is Mike's original question of, do they put it in their budget as a department, or does it just go through the capital committee and the capital committee sends that information to me? Because it was really confusing last year because some people included it, some people didn't. Some people that included it included different amounts than what was on there. So it was just kind of a
I think,
mess.
yeah, I agree. It was a mess. Yeah, we helped do that. We'll own it. But we'll fix it.
But it just wasn't,
Yeah.
it was, I
guess
guess if there's clear direction either way, it'll just
I
work a
think
lot
you
better.
put it in the capital committee and not in your own budget.
Okay, and then the capital committee
That's just me. What
communicates
do you
it to
think,
me,
Commissioner Lloyd?
and then I put
I
it
think
in the
that's the
budget.
intention that we were hoping last year. And then
Okay.
I think one of the oversights we made last year is not maybe bringing Bonnie into the question to ask how it would fold better in and making assumptions. So I think we've already had those discussions and we can work through that as we go through.
So if they put a capital request in through the capital committee, they do not enter it. I think we had this discussion, but then they do enter the lease payments. Is that what we decided? I know we did discuss this right after the budget because it was such a mess.
Come on up. Gene. Yep, come on up, table, Mike.
Remind me,
The lease payments, because they were already for
right?
3 years, they're already
Yeah.
guaranteed for 3
So
years. you
they
need to
put those
in there.
ones in there and then
But we
everything
also
else is capital
include them in
committee.
the capital committee's total budget for
Right.
that year.
Right.
So we know exactly how much money is getting spent.
Yeah.
The hard part, like it comes down to is what is considered are we only considered all capital or we consider capital projects? Because those are two different things.
Yeah. And my thinking is all capital. Because even with our computers last year, I believe they all went to capital.
That's were one of the confusing ones. That and vehicles, I think, were the two most confusing
I
things.
think they,
The computers were the most confusing because they got put in there twice in a lot of places. So
In
I
a
had
lot
to
of-
go in
yeah.
there and take them all out.
Because if you look at it as a big thing, if we buy 50 computers, that's $50,000, just say for example, that we need to include in the capital. But if you look at any one item, that might be 1,000 in mine.
yeah. And I think by being in there, Tim knows where it's all at. He knows the exact number and he can get the bid rather than miss one or two. So,
Well, and that's something I can also put in, because I send out the instructions for the budget. I send out a memo. And that's something I can address in there. If you need a computer, please speak with Tim. He will budget it for you. If you have large capital items and put in the, like specifically what that is, report that to the capital committee.
Yeah,
If,
because I
you-
think
if it's
the
small
confusing
items,
part, yeah.
not a computer, go ahead and put it in your own budget. If it's a lease payment, put it in. If it's a small capital item that's not a computer, put it in.
Because that's a confusing thing, because we have over the 9,999 mark, and we have under that. Well, a computer is $1,000 or $800.
Right.
Where does that exactly fall? So
And I think
So
that
that's
was,
also-
and the reason we have those, because we have equipment less than 1,500. I'll explain the reason there's a reason we have all these accounts. We have equipment less than 1,500. So that gets budgeted in that account because equipment is supposed to last longer than a year. You shouldn't be budgeting for the same thing every year in that equipment less than 1,500 because equipment is supposed to last longer than a year. It's not supposed to be duplicated every year. It's not an operating expense. So we have that account and nothing, it just gets expensed out. We have an equipment between 1,500 and 10,000 because that equipment gets tagged and is on the inventory asset list. We track that because we don't want it to walk away. But it doesn't get capitalized and depreciated. It's just on an inventory list and those lists are sent out every year just to keep them updated and just to make sure things aren't walking out the door because several $5,000 pieces of equipment walking out the door adds up. So then we have 10,000 or more equipment. We have a different line item for that because those are things that actually get capitalized and depreciated.
So I
Because
think
that's
where
those follow our capital
capital,
policy.
and that follows our guideline, but where does the capital committee step in? Do we only
Right.
concentrate on the stuff above 10,000? Do we concentrate on the 1,500 to 10,000? That's where we got confused last year because we started getting into the computer thing,
Mhm.
because if you look at it as a cumulative thing, it's a big purchase, but one off, it's not. So that's where it gets,
And I think Doc, I think a part of our thought as a committee too, is if we look at it from a cumulative purpose, it does become over $10,000. And that's where we see our cost savings is when Tim can bundle
Mhm.
13 computers across 4 departments into one purchase, rather than having 4 departments purchase
Mhm.
3, 2, 5 computers.
It's also the same thing with vehicles.
Yeah.
When we can bundle 4 sheriff's vehicles and 2 road and bridge vehicles and all get the same vehicle, we get way cheaper prices.
and then
Maybe not. this year,
think
but-
a little bit of where Marty's at on her next steps
Mhm.
of purchasing of, what if all of a sudden both cities need 25 computers each or willing to look at the same vehicle
Mhm.
as the county, You know, then if we have all that stuff in one spot, here's Tim with the other ITs from other places, you're going to get a better price on 150 computers than you will on 50.
Well, it's the same thing when we do plow trucks. We use the exact same plow trucks for whiteout. For one thing, they have 600 plow trucks. They know what's going on,
Mhm.
but they also buy a lot. So we get that bulk discount. It's already been out.
I
Already
was
been
just
out.
gonna say that,
So it
yeah.
makes a lot more sense.
It makes a lot of sense. So I think that's the place to go.
Yeah, the one-off design of snowplows just doesn't make sense.
Both questions answered?
I think so.
I'll get
Then-
it to you.
So the capital committee, then they could have capital and they could have capital projects. It still could be under the capital committee though.
Yeah, we could.
Because if you're gonna do a roof, that's a project. If you're gonna buy a truck, that's a capital.
Right. But it's just the dollar amount is where really got muddied in the water. Just
So
last-
where do you think it ought to be? What dollar amount should that capital committee deal with?
Oh,
When
They-
we- Last year, what they did is we just made the list.
Yeah.
And then they said, this is how much, we said, this is how much you have for capital. Well, that's 1 through 9.
Mhm.
And we kind of if I remember right, Gene, we made all of the leasehold payments number 1.
Yes, because they
we're
have to be paid. We're obligated to pay
So
those.
then we really started with item 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we kind of a parenthesis, like this has to be done this year. So there may be a project that's 13th on the list that doesn't have to be done this year. Maybe it doesn't get done next year, but maybe the next year it becomes the number 1 because you don't have a choice to
Right.
get it done. If I remember
Well-
right, the number 2 project was the gel roof, because if we didn't get it done, we were going to go from a $400,000 cost to a $900,000 cost. So we kind of build that into the piece there. Mary.
Well, and the other thing is we give the elected officials and department heads kind of some flexibility to tell us what's important. That, you know, they might submit 5 projects. You rank yours 1 through 5, and then we rank them as a total committee also. You know, so they have some say in that, but yeah, with some of the other things that we have to take into account, but water's got money. Well, like I said, we learned a ton last year.
all right. Mike, go ahead. Come on up. Extra seat and extra mic.
I think, last year, I thought the capital committee just did 10,000 and up, but the computers were a separate item that were below that. So I don't know that there was anything submitted below 10,000 to go to the
Well-
capital committee. I can't recall. But the other item of that is when you do the vehicles, it's a 3-year commitment. So that's where I think that 3-year, Gene was talking about 5 years is really important for that planning cycle.
Well, yeah. And since we're talking mainly electeds and we're talking departments, it doesn't take long to get people together. Take a look at capital and determine what that number, if there's any duplicate or cost, you know what I mean?
No, the hardest part that we had, to be honest with you, is component units, outside agencies looking at their capital, because it was the first time we did it, to see what they wanted to do and
Oh,
also
that
bundle
was-
stuff together.
I think the other hard part with that too is there were certain outside entity projects we ranked really high. The one I'm specifically thinking of, Gene, was the emergency fire panels for the library. But when we cut Jason, that was actually the first thing, like he pulled off his list. Whereas we saw that as like a number 5 or 6
So,
priority on
that's
the
a- that's a
entire
li-
list.
if It's true that it needs to be replaced. It's a life safety issue.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about when you bring that up, the library is our building.
Mhm.
You know, and you're already building in maintenance schedule, maintenance,
We're not on those buildings. We're only doing on the buildings that we take care of.
okay.
That's a topic for another discussion.
All right, I'll
But
leave it
there is a
alone.
lot of other buildings out there that are maintained by outside agencies that we own, but we don't have control over. Does that make sense as far as
It
maintenance?
does. Well, we need to have that conversation. Okay, I'll leave it alone for that.
Before they fall apart.
No, they're all in good, I mean, they're all,
They're in good
everybody's
shape.
in good shape, but it all comes out of the same pot of money. So what's a priority, for everybody and what's that? And the committee really took into the life safety. We even ranked a parking lot repair out at the events complex higher than something else because the parking lot was
Sure,
cracked
yeah.
up and heaved and stuff like that. And we said, if somebody trips out there, that needs to be done.
Okay,
I like
Good to
this
go?
irrigation part.
on the 2 areas with capital, got your questions? We know what we're doing.
So were we gonna, since we're having the departments submit their budgets earlier, were we wanting them to do were we wanting to do the capital portion earlier as well?
Yeah,
Or is that gonna be held off until
Uh,
later?
no,
What does the
it's-
commission want with that?
I think it's got to go early.
It's got to go early, but it's gonna be tough.
Okay, no, I don't think it has
About
to,
the
because
same
it is a
time, at
whole
least.
separate,
Yeah. Well, the hard part
it's a
is
separate component.
if we want capital numbers early, that means we're 6 months before we're actually going to buy something. So to get accurate prices right now, you guys all saw what happened with the lightning strike truck.
Sure.
You know, that's really the hard part right now, and getting commitments from somebody, you know, in January for something that we might not purchase until July.
Well, and that's why I don't think it necessarily has to be done with the department budgets, with the payroll and the operating, because it's gonna be budgeted separately. It's gonna go through the capital committee. So really, it doesn't have to be done. I mean, it's up to the commission. I'm just saying it.
But the only reason we'd go early is to meet with each of those.
Yeah,
As per Commissioner Tolman's request.
right.
Well, and they might have to just say, yeah, this is what I'm projecting, but I don't know about this and this. It's
Yeah.
just,
Well,
something
and
we
the-
said to get it in our mind.
Well, and
what-
the interesting part that,
you
you
know.
know, it's not like it's every, I mean, I'll pick on Dave. Dave doesn't use a whole lot of capital. You know,
Oh, then
if you look at Public Works, you look at fire, you look at sheriff, to be honest with you, we're the 3 largest capital hogs there is.
Which makes sense.
Very
Data
But
in
you
this
think this
copiers.
process will work, though, to help us get ahead of the budget? To help you guys feel more confident about your budget instead of us
I-
redlining certain things at the last
Yeah, you know,
hour?
that's it, you know, I went back and forth on exactly how to do the budget and to involve other people in the budget or whether they should be doing the budget. The hard part for me is, like I always said, fuel. You know, fuel, oil, the stuff like that, that's out there on a futures market stuff.
Yeah, it's tough.
Well-
And that's one of the arenas that, you know, you take your best shot at it.
Mhm.
And if you miss it, you know, you miss it and we're gonna have to cover it.
I missed it. I'll just be honest with you.
Well-
But Gene, what, a month in, we were talking about how the prices.
No,
But a month or two after we submitted budgets, though, when we approved it, gas went up 40 to 70 cents a
Uh-huh.
gallon after
Yeah.
he had made the guess. I mean, there's no way. And you know what? That's what's going to eventually, what's going to happen is going to be the opposite. Eventually, Gene's going to guess based upon 360 a gallon for a year, and it's going to shoot back down to 320 eventually. And it's going to be it just, there's some things that are just throwing a dart at a dartboard. And that's why your budget at points is a living document too.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mike, anything to add? Okay, good, Bonnie?
I'm good with capital, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess, as far as we have or we haven't made a decision, I guess, as far as when those are gonna be due, or is that something to discuss? for a
Well,
later
that's
date,
gonna,
or you
we
have?
didn't make that decision right here,
Okay,
but Commissioner Lloyd and Commissioner Tolman, when they talk with you about dates and stuff, they know what we're talking about, and you guys can come up with some dates and you can organize and see who you want brought in. I mean, that's.
And you can help us. You can give us suggestions,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
We might not accept them, but you
I
can
know,
tell us,
I
based
love
on my
telling people my
accounting experience, I
opinion.
would say that you should have a deadline here and here, and maybe we can start with this.
So, all right, with that?
Mhm.
Okay, so we've got some things to move forward.
I think so.
Yeah, okay, I know, anything else with budget?
No. And I do have to leave in the next 5 to 10 minutes to make a board meeting for the library and,
Well, I
we have
know,
a library board meeting. So I just want to make sure everyone knows where I'm at with my
okay,
time.
let's do this really quick. We got about 4 minutes and we've kept Fire Warden Bernasian. He showed up, willing to wait. Let's have him come up table and I know, there's questions in all of our minds about ambulance, joint powers boards and that, but I think ambulance is something that's just gonna happen. I think we plan in our budget a minimum of 1.2 and we'll know more as Commissioner Smith works with ambulance service. And we'll even know more if there's a date and time when things move in the best direction. But right now, we know for a fact that if ambulance service continues with the service entities we have, it's probably going to be minimally the same dollars, with knowing fact that any one of them will be in asking for an additional $300,000 or $400,000
better not.
during the year. Well, you can say that. For 6 years, I said that and it
I
didn't
know.
happen.
Well, special thanks to Commissioner Lloyd for
Yeah.
getting that off of dead center, because I think you did a good job of turning that around. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
But anyhow, with that, Mike, I think we're pretty well, good shape. And then you commented about fire. So I think maybe it might be time if you feel desire, you got some questions for Commission or for Mr. Bornasian, if you want to wait until,
I think we should wait until we have the whole commission. I think maybe we will have an opportunity to discuss that tomorrow, maybe. Because I think it's a commission decision how we want to go forward with that.
when you say for,
I will refer back to my desire to request a committee to meet with the fire chiefs and a couple of commissioners to
to do.
look at the future of our county fire.
Okay, and I think everybody's in agreement with that, and that type of thing. We know that's a heavy lift. Well, let's just leave it right there, and we'll talk about it together. And I don't know if it's not on the agenda for tomorrow, and that type of thing. So,
Well, we can do it under other, because I think we did open that door last time saying we wanted a committee
Well,
to
that's-
address that.
well, I was just gonna say, we don't have it on the agenda, but we can amend the agenda tomorrow.
Okay.
Or under other, just to start having a conversation about fire.
Okay.
Fire warden, I apologize. I asked you to be here because I thought we'd get to that sooner and start talking about it. I know you got better things to do. And being the only, you're the only one that can pump a truck right now. Am I correct? Yeah, I know it. But right now, in the fire department, you're basically manning a truck till we get some staffing taken care of for you. So anyhow, I hope we didn't mess things up for you. So we'll move forward with further discussions. You okay with that?
I am, and I just want to reiterate something Mary said. I think this is a great concept of going to a committee to make a recommendation and looking at two recommendations. What would it look like if it stayed the same? What else could it look like would be the second recommendation, and even a third recommendation of, hey, as we explored, this is where we're at. I do want to point out, I did make time to meet with Warden Bernasian last week, and I'm working on some follow-up questions. I will email him based upon our conversation. But I like the concept of going to a committee to make a recommendation to the board of concepts of how to move forward in fire, because I do believe there are ways to find some more efficiency. So that's where I stand, Doc.
Very good. Very good. So with that.
And we're going to make it we'll add it to the agenda tomorrow, correct?
Yeah.
Is the plan?
One of you can make a motion to add it, have fire discussion, and the other one can second it. Well, how that will work, of course, is we'll approve our agenda with a motion and a second, and then during the discussion part, someone can amend it. Okay?
Okay.
All right, very good. But anyhow, with that, now, our next workshop, do you wish to continue with budget on the, what is that Monday right before our board meeting after the new year? Monday, the 4th? Is that correct?
Third.
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 Okay, so January 3rd,
Is that no, never mind. The holiday's Friday.
yeah, holiday's Friday. So I think Monday, the courthouse is open.
I would skip it and go to the next meeting.
I would be okay with that too, just because it's going to be hard to really accomplish anything over the next 2 weeks with one of the nice things is the first meeting, sometimes that first meeting of the month, we have 3 weeks between, so you have more time to put work together. I think if we skip the next one and go to the third, I think that would be better, and people will still be traveling and those things. So
Well, and that'll give the three of us time to give a schedule. So
Yes,
that third
absolutely.
meeting, we can tell you what the
Yeah, we
schedule
can.
is, and here's how we're going to make it fit in February, March, whatever.
So our next workshop will be the third Monday in January, which will be the 17th, I believe.
Is that a holiday?
That's a holiday.
holiday.
Martin Luther King Day.
Oh,
No, I don't.
I ran a nonprofit for years. We believed in 5 holidays a year, and that's if you got the lucky straw and you weren't on call.
Well, we could do it that Monday before, which is the odd Monday.
Your next Monday, you could probably do it, would be the 31st of January. 'cause
What
we have
about the
a-
one in between?
Yeah, what if,
And you go to February 7th.
No, January after,
Oh,
The
you're
fourth.
saying, I see what you're
24th.
saying.
24th?
That, or we
No.
could go between the first and the,
17th, between the first and
Yeah.
17th.
so you could go the 10th.
Okay, so what about we go to the 10th?
I like the 10th.
And then that'll give us time as a subcommittee to get a
absolutely.
schedule. So really on that meeting on the 10th, we're just going to review a schedule of how we're going to get through the rest of the
No,
budget.
that's okay. Just keep in mind that,
Will that work?
yeah, that'll work. But remember, we started out with saying the first and third Monday of every month, unless it's a holiday.
Which we got banged on really
We
twice.
got banged on. So what we're gonna do then is go on the 7th of January
The 10th, you just
or the
said.
10th.
Okay.
And then are we going to come back again on the 17th or go back to the first and third after that? I
I
think.
think we go back to the first and third. because
All right,
17th
so
would be
one
more
meeting in
vacation.
January, Cindy, the 17th, and then we'll come
No,
back,
10th.
the
10th.
10th, I'm sorry. The 10th, and then we'll come back the first and third Monday in
February.
February.
I'm good.
We have a plan.
We have a plan.
All right,
We
sounds good.
totally didn't outrun the
And
other
we
two
we can
commissioners.
cancel them and we can talk about them in our
No,
regular
I'm
meeting.
good though. Like, cause I kind of like having the deadlines because it makes you be adhere to them a little more and be a little more proactive, to be honest. with you.
All right, with that, any more business for this workshop? If
No.
no longer, I'll
Just clarify one thing really
Yes,
quick,
you may.
going way back to earlier in our discussion. Our funding request form is on our website. Anyone is welcome to apply for funding. I just wanted to clarify that. There's no opting in, opting out. If you don't want funding, you just don't fill out a funding request form. If you want funding, you fill out the funding request form. It's available on the website. Anyone who contacts me, I'm willing to send it to them.
and this one now will replace that one. The old one.
This new form.
Yes, the new form will replace the old form,
Okay.
and I do update that every year.
All right.
And it's available on the website. Anyone can apply for it. It doesn't matter what type of entity you are. I just want to make that clear to the public that anyone is welcome to apply for funding. We will accept, it doesn't mean the county will provide them funding, but anyone is welcome to turn in a funding request form. It's not limited to the entities we have previously funded.
Go ahead.
So Commissioner Lloyd, wouldn't it be, for the outside entities, just stick with the schedule and the budget or the deadlines that you've always done?
I think that's something we can talk about when the three of us meet.
Yeah, you're supposed, the three of
We'll-
you. will
We'll
set
figure that out then.
Three, you can set it. Okay.
Okay.
No use wasting time. Okay. Any other business? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
So moved to